Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuto, and welcome to another Dalla Terra Masterclass. Today we're joining our friends, the Inamas, in the region of Soave, and we're going to do a deep dive today into some of their Crus, the idea of Crus, the idea of what Soave is today. It's a really, really different region than it was earlier, different from your grandmother's Soave, that's for sure. But before we introduce them, just want to, because we've got a lot of new people, new viewers today, a little bit of background on us and Dalla Terra. So my name is Brian Larkey, and I founded Dalla Terra back in back in 1990. So this is our 30th anniversary. And before that, I was at UC Davis, started that in 1980. And then in 85, after graduating, I headed over to Italy and was the winemaker at Ca del Bosco after working in Napa Valley for a few years, and just fell in love with Italy. It was the most exciting wine growing region in the world back then, and I believe even more so today. And it's the people, it's the stories, and it's the fact that we've got over 600 varietals in Italy versus, I don't know, 10 in California. It's diverse, it's exciting, and absolutely love it. It's a treat, it's a privilege really to be able to bring the stories of our producers to the United States. We work with about 60 distributors nationally, a team of 20 dedicated Dalla Terra members, and we've got about 30 brands that are owned by about 20 different families in the that we represent here in the States. It's Italian. It's a highly curated portfolio of exclusively Italian wines, and we look for producers like the Inamas that are family owned and that represent the apex of production. Developed a way to market, which I coined Dalla Terra Winery Direct, and so we eliminate the national importers and bring greater value to the consumer in America. It's been a highly successful method of doing this. To my knowledge, I think we're still the only guys in the United States that are doing this exclusively with Italian wines. And above all, I want to thank our team here at Dalla Terra once again for making all this possible. Let's cut over to the Inama family and welcome them. We've got three of the younger generation with us right now. We've got Alessio, Matteo, and Luca.
Hi.
Hello, guys.
How you doing, Brian? Nice to see you.
Buongiorno, buongiorno. Maybe we should give these guys a little map, a little idea of kind of where you guys are sitting. And sure. We could show a couple images here that give you an idea of where Soave is located. So you guys are up in the northern part of Italy, and you're located kind of near the town of Verona, just a little bit east of Lake Garda. For those who have been to Verona, the Vinitaly events and all that, it's very close to there. It's an amazing region, both historically as well as geologically. And it's an area that's I think brings a lot of attention because you get so many tourists that go through Verona. A lot of people have an opportunity to try the wines there. You guys will get into that in just a minute, but they're based on a grape called Garganega. It comes from the Latin word Gracanicum, because this was an area that was conquered and founded by the Romans. Gracanicum meaning coming from Greece. So they came across from Greece, and the Romans brought the grapes up. Not to be confused, by the way, with Soave di Trebbiano, which is really Verdicchio, but we digress. Anyway, let me pass la parola a voi. And I'd like to hear a little bit, first of all, about what each of you does in the winery and how long you've been there. So you guys are the third generation after your grandfather and your father, Stefano. Who should we start with? Chi inizia?
Oh, I start as the first one, as I'm the one who does less. So basically the job less of the three brothers. My name is Alessio, and I manage sales and communication. So basically what I do is to travel around the world with my skateboard. Here it is. Talking about wine and inspiring people to drink more of our wine, which is pretty awesome. But the reality is that I'm allergic to pollen, and so I cannot really work in the farms, and so I allow Luca to do that. That is very good.
Exactly. In fact, I manage more agricultural and solar practices. and I generally check teams in vineyards as well, and the work has to be well done. And also Matteo.
I'm Matteo. I joined the business 10 years ago, and my destiny is to solve problems and solve our mistakes.
We could use more people like you these days. So you guys are the third generation, and Matteo, you said, what did you say? Just like a decade ago you came in, but each of you has had extensive experience outside of Italy. You've worked in different places in the US and the UK, and different places in Europe. So it wasn't just coming directly in the winery. These are all choices, individual choices that you guys made, because this is it's a lifetime decision. And I think that it's a real treat to have a next generation that's as strong, as diversified as each of you are, both personality, but also your expertise and the different areas that you've dedicated yourselves to, brings a lot to the program here. Can you guys give us just a little bit of detail, a little bit of background, perhaps, in the region from your perspective of Soave? Because I know it's different today than when you guys were growing up, and maybe from there we can branch out into the geology.
Sure. Well, I'm going to start with this. So Soave Classico is a very ancient area, very well known since very old times for winemaking. As you mentioned before, Romans back 2,000 years ago started to make white wines on these hills. This is a very special, and that's why Romans decided to start here. Those hills in the Soave Classico appellation are the only volcanic soil hills of the north of Italy, or at least the most important ones. Romans, as you were saying, were bringing all the best from Greece. The lifestyle, the parties, I guess also the orgies, and the wine. And the wine for sure was called Grecanicum, so coming from Greece. And they planted it here, well, in 2,000 years of history, adapted to the specific conditions of this area. In reality, these volcanoes were active between 60 and 30 million years ago. So it's a very different kind of volcanoes from others in Italy, like Vesuvio, or even more recent and actually active even right now, Etna. Those volcanoes were covered by the sea. Until 30 million years ago, there was the sea covering the north of Italy. And so they were, submarine volcanoes. And what is very interesting is that in the Soave Classico, you can find a lot of different geology from some areas more on the west side of the appellation that are more limestone. So they're actually the bottom of the sea. While on the center and east side of the appellation are completely basaltic lava, but with different colors, different compositions. As we can see from the slides, we can have different levels of oxidization of the volcanic lava. We can have a magma with gases, or we can have some very compact magma that was actually inside the volcano when the water came in just after the eruption, or they are the ashes. So a lot of history, a lot of complexity. And then that is the base for the beginning of this region as a winemaking region. 2,000 years of history, Garganega here for 2,000 years, adapted incredibly well. And for a long time, for medieval time until the beginning of the 20th century, Soave was considered the queen of Italian white wine. Everybody knew how delicious and harmonic and mineral was the wine from Soave. In the second half of the 1900s, there's been kind of a change, a perspective in what is the consideration of Soave due to some work and some, different focus that has been here. A lot of demand from around the world brought a lot of attention to Soave. And in that time, between the 60s and the 70s, cooperatives kind of expanded the area, started to become very big players in what is the production, focusing more on the quantity rather than the quality. towards the end of the 80s and beginning of the 90s, actually, a handful of producers started to focus completely again on the quality, on highlighting the differences of each vineyard rather than standardizing the quality of the grapes as it was done before. And that has been a process. It's been a journey in the last 20 years. And for sure, Inama, my dad, my grandfather, and their vision were essential in what is the perception of Soave nowadays. What we can see is definitely that it's growing again. New people, new generation, new consumers are very curious in this appellation, because the wines are fantastic and are really affordable. Now it's very interesting to be for us the third generation in this business, because we get the heritage of the hard work of my dad and grandfather in trying to really bring back the attention to the fine product, to the high quality Soave. And now we have a very important job to take it to the next level, and that's what we are trying to do.
Let me interrupt you for just a second, just talk about your father and your grandfather and the history, because it's one thing to say that we're focused on quality and that we're looking to take it to the next level, but you really, really got to understand where your grandfather and where your father started, what was happening around them at the time. It was all co-ops. There was very, very little focus on quality, very little focus on terroir, very little focus on, acid and minerality and wines that can continue to evolve. And I just really have to tip my hat to their vision in those times, back in the 80s, and when your dad came back in the 80s and 90s. It was co-ops, and it's an amazing transition. And to see Inama's leadership back then and also today, it's been a real treat to see that. And for you guys to come in and be able to stand on the shoulders of giants and be able to kind of have a better view up there, and you can see into the next past, the next chapter, the next future. That's exciting stuff. And also to see that the way the wines have been accepted throughout the world. It's not like, oh yeah, we know what that is. People have no idea what it was, based on a history that was so limited. And now with the investment and the vision and your commitment also now in the third generation, it's exciting to see what's going on. So chapeau. I interrupted you, Matteo.
It's fun to hear that sometimes, our dad was telling us, oh, back in the days when I started to sell, to bottle the wine, it was basically impossible to sell a single bottle of fine Soave Classico, because people were like, oh, I don't want Soave. That is not good. They didn't know that actually Soave is fantastic, because it's been a few decades of bad reputation. But finally, we can see this going to the new level.
Terrific.
I think, Brian, it's really important to tell everybody in the wine trade that it's really important to understand the history of Italy in general. Italy was called Enotria during Greek times. It has been always full of different local grapes, and cooperatives in the 70s were leading the production. So in other places of Europe, the church was investing in wool and in fine wines because there was less also wars between commons. And Italy had been always big internal wars, and there was no time to focus on quality. And slowly, step by step, lot of wine, lot of cooperatives. And so the focus really started in the 80s for Italy. This is really important to understand.
Yeah, it was really that transition in the 80s when Italians began to look up to France and say, wow, look what these guys are doing. They're actually making money on this. People are looking out for these wines. What if we invested more? What if we raised the level of quality? What if we took our wines instead of just something you have at every meal to something that begins to be special? And it was really, you're right, it was really in the 80s when we saw a strong investment into high quality winemaking, led by Angelo Gaia, led by the Antinores, led by these foundation brands, I'll call them. Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. And that was the year that I moved to Italy. I moved to Italy the first time in '85, and it was just right on that cusp. It was so exciting to see what was happening in that transition time. So you guys found yourselves. I mean, as I like to say, it's better to be lucky than smart. And even all three of you guys put together, you're not nearly as smart as you are lucky. You're so fortunate to be in this incredible area, which is really the Pianura, the flats with the A4 autostrada that kind of driving between Milan, Verona, all the way off to Venice. And looking up to the north, right there are the Alps, and you're right in that transition zone. Which is kind of where the Earth's crust was kind of buckling as Africa was slamming into Europe, creating this incredible soil. That's, in some places it's red, like in Colli Berici, and where you guys are, you have this incredible basalt and fossilized ash. That's incredible. But the Garganega wines, the Garganega grapes, I should say, are not farmed in a well, let me just say they're farmed in a pergola system. They're farmed in a system that gets them up and away from the soil. It's a little bit different than what most people see in other parts of the world. And yet it works ideally because, as you said, Garganega has been there for 2,000 years. So it's ideally suited to the soil and to the region. Are you guys really still happy with that type of viticulture?
It's still a big argument. We have to face what is the difference between, the tradition and the man. The man keeps, reinventing and keeps trying to implement everything. So old vines are the most important thing. And in the tradition, the pergola is working actually really well. So for sure, pergola is a great system, and nowadays with the global warming, also with the sun, it's protecting very well the grapes from the light. But I think if you're a great vigneron, if you really work well at your vineyards, you can really try to alternative ways of growing grapes, also with like Guyot, double capovolto, and for sure you can have great results. It's something really, really complex to discuss. We would need our own masterclass only about this, I think.
Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. Luca, you're the one that gets out in the sunshine with your straw hat looking like a farmer out there. What are your thoughts in the, as you've been out working the vineyards for these years? There we go. There's some beautiful shots of these rolling hills.
Well, yeah, definitely these hotter and hotter summers are getting a bit more difficult to get the grapes under the shadow. So that's very important to keep the freshness.
Yeah, your wines for me they're about finesse, they're about brightness, they're about elegance. They're not about weight and power. And you do a beautiful job of pulling that region, pulling that terroir, being able to focus on that. One thing, I've been fortunate to be at the winery during many, many, many harvests. And one of the things that I always notice is that you guys are some of the latest folks to harvest. Many of your neighbors have picked, 10 days sometimes prior to you. And you're looking for longer hang time for full maturation, full physiological maturation of the fruit, which I think really shines as we get farther and farther down the line, as these wines begin to show 2, 5, 8+ years in the bottle.
You want to talk about the vegetal against terroir, Luca, concerning the maturation?
No, but I think that focus we can translate into the 2 cru wines that we're going to focus on today. So those 2 cru wines, why don't you guys lead into that and give us an idea of the concept of crus, first of all, in Soave, and then the story behind these 2.
Yeah, I can talk about the cru system. I joined the council of the consortium a few years ago. This was a very important moment because the cru sites always existed, and we could see in the market these labels for a long time. But there was no official cru map, and so we had to deposit and to define these perimeters and bring it to the ministry and make it official. So this has been a big work of the consortium. So the consortium played a main role in this because it's their role. and everything went really well. And now we can say that there are 32 official crus, which you can find the labels on the markets. You can really taste the wines. That's the best way to discover these specific areas. They're called specific areas, which actually means cru. So there's a good movement. There's more young producer coming in the market. You can find the different expressions of the different sites in the Soave areas, different types of lava. Some is more limestone, and I have to say, in the past years, there's a lot of things coming out. It's really interesting, and a lot of new young producer, a lot of energies in the appellation. So it's really a great moment.
Fantastic.
We can show two cru. The areas are not really far. The main cru we produce is Foscarino, which brings the name of the hill. Is actually called the Monte Foscarino. Is a hill which is a high 300 meters, and on this hill we are between 150 and 250 meters. I call it, you can see from this picture, the volcano, it's like an old volcano, and it's like a panettone. So it's like a big cake, and it's facing the plain. So it's a cru which is round, facing east, south, west. We have all the exposition in Inama. We are very lucky. We have 22 hectares on the Foscarino, which my granddad slowly bought from the 60s, and also my father, and we are still buying little plots.
All of those are our vineyards, basically.
The ones you can see in the pictures, it's almost all Inama sites. And the main characteristic of the Foscarino is that this hill is really windy and is quite rocky. So this produces very rich wine. We have the typical apricot and almond of the Garganega in the volcanic soil. It's really nutty. We ferment this wine in used barrels, and the lava is quite dark. It's quite dark, the soil.
This is the kind of lava that we have on Foscarino, by the way. If you want to see, this is very dark basaltic lava of the Foscarino.
It's floral, it's mineral, it's round, and I have to say that what is really important for understanding a Soave is the longevity. Soave wines can age really beautifully and become very complex, going from a floral sensation into even dry flower sensation in a very tertiary mood, which is very complex. Also in the marzipan is a beautiful sensation you can find, for example, in the Foscarino when it ages and goes into this kind of very golden color, like you can see here.
So this is the label of Foscarino, and it's kind of our historical cru. Yeah.
This is the history of Inama. The best batch of Foscarino becomes our label Dulux, which has angels which are changing color every year. And this is just a small single vineyard in the Foscarino, whereas the Vigneti di Foscarino is different plots together.
Mm-hmm.
What is also very important is that we macerate a little bit during before pressing. This is something not everybody do. It's really important when you have a very thick skin, like in our viticulture. I will talk later about this, why we have thicker skins, to extract from the skin the aromatic compounds, the structure, and the tension that then you find in the wine. So for Foscarino, we do like around 12 hours maceration. And here microfloras are really interacting in the structure, and also the content of the skin is bringing this complexity. This is why also the wine is a little bit more yellow with respect to a normal wine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when I was looking into both these vineyards, Carbonara and Foscarino, and both these vineyards go back half a century. I mean, these are 50-year-old vines out there, right? It's a long time. I mean, the fact that these vineyards have been out there in these exposures for so long is exciting to know the history over there. But it's a little bit sad to think that back in the day, these incredible fruit, these incredible vineyards weren't shown as they are, but instead they were probably blended into, you know, into larger bottlings. And now you guys are doing a beautiful job of pulling these things out and separating them, whether it's Dalla, Foscarino, or Carbonara. And you can basically see when we're sitting on top of the Foscarino vineyard, you can just look over the shoulder there a little bit, kind of, I guess it's to the northeast, and see the Carbonara vineyard right there. They're about the same elevation and sort of the same age. So it's really two wonderful expressions of something that's that are similar both in age and concept and varietal, but two very different expressions of that. So that's a real treat to be able to bring to the US market.
Yeah, Foscarino was born in '92. So it's some time we produce this wine. My father always believed in no compromise. So amazing grapes and the wine you would really like to drink. So we never followed the market. We never made what the market requested. We always made what we felt was the right thing. So Foscarino has been here for a lot of time, and we are still working very hard to develop this label. And Carbonare is a label which started in 2016. Now on the market you can drink 17. You can buy mainly 17. And this is a vineyard we bought 5 years ago. We converted into our organic and more philosophy. And then in 17, finally, I think we really have the wine we wanted. It's a very, very different type of terroir, because it's a pure east-facing place. It's very protected from another hill. So it's protected from the air of the plain. It's very cool during the night. There's this valley bringing cool air. And when it rains, you see the water coming out from the plot for many, many days on the sides. So there's much more water respect to the Foscarino in the Carbonare rocks. And the rocks are a little bit different. If Foscarino is darker, you can see like Carbonare is a bit more, you have more yellow, like sulfur, and more copper inside. Actually, there are many different stripes of volcanic soil, but it's quite different, the color. We still didn't make a proper research, and I'm not sure it will be so easy to connect the exact type of components of the lava in the wine. We actually don't care. We just follow and we listen. We follow the rhythm, and we feel the grapes in the Carbonare are more citrusy. They have more like tension, more freshness. And so we decided to make also a practice in the cellar, which was emphasizing this prospect. So this wine, for example, is made in stainless steel. It has no malolactic, and you can feel a lot of freshness and acid mineral tension, more pineapple-y, always very floral, but for sure a vertical wine. So it's a perfect example that can bring to the customers and to the wine lovers what can be the real difference between the Crus Foscarino and the Crus Carbonare.
I would say Foscarino is very elegant and the Carbonara is vibrant.
It is. It's more electric. It's got lower pH. It's got more tenacity to it, I would say, the Carbonara, which is it's a wonderful thing, because you guys have been working that for a little while before you decided to bottle it on its own. As we're looking at some of the Crus here, what are some of the differences between the Crus and the classical bottling of your Soave? So we find these wines in the United States far and wide. There's been great reception for the Crus, as well as the Soave Classico. But what are some of the differences in terms of, obviously we talked about soil, we talked about elevation, but are there differences in the winemaking? You talked about the stainless steel only for Carbonara, which I really like. I like the idea of really beginning to differentiate between the various Crus. But what are some of the things that, or are there things that you're doing in terms of yields that differentiate the Crus again from the Classico?
I would say the idea behind these cru selections is to valorize and highlight the differences. So in both crus, we do lower yield compared to the everyday Vin Soave, our classic Soave Classico, and that allows, of course, with the old vines to have a more concentrated, more deep and complex more fruit. But at that point, the main difference is basically disposition of the two crus. Of course, the soil can be slightly different, but as a Foscarino is a cru where you can get a lot of sun because basically it's facing south and it goes from east to south to west. You get what concentration, the intensity of the Garganega under the sun in Carbonare is completely spacing. So it's very repaired. You get a lot of freshness, only the morning light. And so the vinification are really kind of trying to highlight those two differences. Foscarino, with the barrel aging, it gets very round, while Carbonare, without malolactic and only stainless steel, it gets very vertical, very fresh. And it is very interesting to see how the same grape in the same terroir, with just like a couple of kilometers from one side to the other one, it is really changing its personality with the interpretation of the human being that is behind. And in all of this work of really putting a lot of attention to detail in the vineyards to have more, more identity in the grapes, thicker skin, a lot of attention to all the wild environment around the vines in order to really push out the complexity of the specific place. At that point, you can verify everything together, and so you see the differences, but there's going to be, of course, some differences, but more flat, or valorize what you're getting. And at that point, so we are highlighting the personality of those specific sites, trying to, give more personality to the wine in that sense, in that direction.
Excellent. Go ahead, Matteo.
Yeah, I can speak quite briefly about what we did in the past 10 years, which is really important because you can talk about terroir, but if you didn't invest in viticulture, everything becomes standardized from what happens in nature with no control. And because wine is made from man, okay? So in the past, when I joined, Inama was doing already really well. Stefano handled very well the production. But when we talked together, my father said, and now we really need to improve the viticulture at the best level we can. And that's really, really expensive and takes a lot of effort and a lot of patience. So we started to, of course, move to a better organic viticulture. We started to work the soil. So we started to bring more life. We started to break the soil. We started to produce our own manure, which doesn't mean we are biodynamic. I still have no idea if you are biodynamic or not. We can say we are organic / we try to do what people used to do 100 years ago.
Brian, you know my dad. He doesn't like definitions. Right?
No. Your dad defines his own wine as being successful if the bottle's gone at the end. That's his definition of exactly wines that are loved and enjoyed and appreciated. Matteo, you're talking about the last 10 years, which is really interesting because let's say in the last decade, especially for folks that are coming out with your perspective right now, things are changing and they're changing a lot. And as you guys are working with your vineyards, those of you who aren't allergic to work and aren't allergic to the sunshine or pollen or whatever your latest ragione was, I don't know, but at least Luca gets out there. How have things changed in the last decade? What are you guys seeing in terms of climate change, in terms of how you're farming the vineyards a little bit differently today, or maybe what you expect you may be ready to do tomorrow?
You want to talk about this, Luca?
Well, for whites, we have to say, as I mentioned you before, really the challenge nowadays is to don't burn the grapes, to don't get them burned by the sunlight. always under the shadow in order to really have the freshness and good selections when
during the harvest.
during harvest. Check every day the vineyards. Also, we can say climate change can be a thing of climate is warmer, but is also a thing of global changing in terms of we can say insects, because new insects are imported. So once upon a time, my father, when it was middle August, was just lay down and waited. The grapes were getting ripe. Now we have to check all the vineyards every day and be on top of everything, or from one day to another, things can be different.
So are you guys seeing a difference in the amount of hang time from flowering to fruit set to when you're picking? Is it, or are you able through canopy management to give yourselves more or less the same time span for physiological ripeness? Or are you guys picking a little bit earlier as well as things begin to change?
No, actually, we don't pick earlier because we don't like vegetal notes in the wine. Vegetal means no terroir. It's green, and you need to get the right ripeness. In the white wine, is very little the window, so that's why it's really important to balance one vine between the other through the right pruning, bringing new oak in these old vines, bringing energy in every vine, so the maturations are going quite similar, so you don't bring overripe or underripe into the wine. That's how you make a wine which is defined and expressive of the soil. This is something is really easy to say, very difficult to make. And it's also important what I said before, together with the pruning and with the health of the vines. We are like a nursery. We need to take care of these vines. Every vine can have, you know, a little problem. We need really to see what's happening.
Especially when they get older.
Especially when they get older. And also, the hydric stress is the main challenge for every wine area now, white or red grapes. So the more you work the soils, the more the water goes inside during the winter and during the spring, the more you collect the water, which becomes like humidity and water in the clays, in the volcanic clays. And this is going to be your key point to face some summers are hot. Actually, some summers are not so hot, but you can have a really hot summer now. It depends. But having this water filtering through all the plants you let grow and all the soil you've been working can allow you to survive to the summer properly and to have a maturation into a light stress, but not in a strong stress. If not, like you lose aromas and also we would lose like the happiness to produce wine, because it's really sad to see your vines in a bad mood. I feel in a bad mood as well. And then my wife is in a bad mood as well. And when we all feel in a bad mood, it's crazy.
No, water retention is great. Water retention is key. And as you're talking about, like with Carbonata, you can see for drainage is important, but also water retention in those clay soils is what can get you through those long summer months. Give us an idea of, just take Foscarino as an example. How large is Foscarino in total hectares? And I think you said you have about 22 hectares in Foscarino. What percentage of the total of the 32 Crus in Soave, Foscarino is only one of them, but how big is that total vineyard?
Foscarino is one of the biggest hills.
Yeah.
So it's like 180 hectares around. And
how many different owners are there in that large area?
Lots. And most of them, I'm not sure 100% about the numbers, but more than 50% they bring the grapes to the cooperatives, which are actually making also very good wines now. Before there was more demand for volume. Now everything is moving to like more expressive wines. And then there's many top producer having some vineyards there. Not all of them they put that Crus in the label, but you can find more than one label with written Foscarino on it. So
Oh yeah, I mean, for me,
Fine.
that's one of the exciting things, is that there are so many owners, and the reason I say that is twofold. One, we have more ambassadors out there talking about a region in terms of the expressiveness, which is important. And the other reason is maybe there are opportunities with small owners. It's not owned by three giant organizations. There are many small owners out there, which gives me hope that maybe you can find another Carbonata, maybe you can find another vineyard out there in the future, just as Giuseppe, your grandfather, did, slowly acquiring piece by piece. It gives us some opportunities for the future, maybe, right? Having so many small growers out there.
Definitely. I mean, working every day towards taking care of these little differences and, you know, with attention to details, this allows us to you know, maybe a batch that until a few years ago was going in the Vin Soave because it was like, oh, okay, this is good, but not so exciting as maybe that specific plot of Foscarino. Then, you know, if you improve the viticulture, you start to really micro parcelizing everything, bring up the average quality of the grapes in that specific plot. At that point, maybe the curiosity is going to lead us to say, hey, what if we vinify also this specific plot, this
Right.
specific vineyard differently, and then maybe it's going to be another Crus label, you know? This is a very interesting game that is appearing right now. And, you know, as we could see happening in Mosel or in Burgundy and then in Barolo, you know, you have to be curious. You have to be curious to really go to the end of the problem, not just stop at the beginning. Start to try to find solutions and valorize what you have. At that point, through using you know, selections, that is very key for us, really like finding the best plots, finding the best grapes in every plot, then you're starting to really see high differences from one side to another one. And at that point, it's amazing that we are right now in the position that we can work on a specific level, on a specific Crus, and valorize it.
Yeah, it would be a privilege to only make wines that only you can make, but many people have vineyards that are in different areas of this 32 Crus. That's the highest expression of what Garganega is today. It's the highest expression of what Soave is today.
Actually, I think it's very interesting to see the different interpretation of two different wineries or two different men, vigneron in the same Crus.
Exactly.
Our vineyard is Foscarino and another Foscarino label. At that point, you see the differences not just in the Crus, but in the viticulture that is behind it, and in the philosophy of winemaking style that is behind it.
Right, and you guys are the you have the highest vineyards on Mount Foscarino. You're at the very top, basically, up there. And it's funny because as we drive up the hill or walk up the hill, you can see that the lower areas have picked well before you have, and way up there. I mean, as I said earlier, there's a large discrepancy or a large gap between when people start picking on Foscarino and when Inama picks. You guys are always the latest pickers, and it's risky, you know, if the weather changes and whatnot. But without great risk, you don't get great rewards. As people are looking at Soave in the United States, well, I guess in the world for that matter, we're seeing two different areas. One are two different characteristics. One are kind of the exponential excursion, let's say, into the Crus, and the other are just the Soave DOCGs and the Soave Superiore DOCGs. Can you talk just a little bit about those and the comparison between Soave and Soave Superiore?
You go on, Matti.
Go ahead. A lot of people don't understand this. It's got to be a little more understandable.
It's Italy is really great in complicating everything.
Yes.
We come from the Mandarin culture, so the more the system is complicated, the more we feel happy. And so Inama decided, like many other producers, just to get out from this, and we just speak about the Crus. And then if it's a superiore, which means superior or not, the customers will decide. Because superiore changed, the rules changed too many times. So this was very confusing for the producer and for the public. So what I suggest is to follow the brand and follow the name of the crew and taste and judge, because a Superiore or DOCG or DOC or Classico at the moment don't really represent the key point of lecture. But I was speaking with a very good friend, Sarah Abbott, which is a master of wine, and she told me, can I tell you something? Even in Burgundy, everything is changing, because you can find a Mercury, which is more expensive than a Chambol-Musigny, because it's not about the classification anymore, it's about the producer and how the producer is developing the viticulture, and then what you're doing with these grapes, you know, can be amazing, even if you're in a place which is meant to have less potential. So World of Wine keeps developing. This is amazing.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's a wonderful summary. It's really follow the people, which we do every day with our friendships, with our relationships. You follow the people, and you guys are a great example of that. So speaking of people, we've got three wonderful people right here in the Inama family, and you guys are third generation. Where are you going to be leading us in the future? If we're going to be following the people, what are some of the things that you guys see coming up? What are the any exciting new projects? You might want to mention, do you guys only make white wines? And if not, why? And give us a couple of ideas as we begin to wrap this up for what are some of the exciting things we can look for from Inama in the future?
So in the last few years, as a third generation, we started to really question something. It's part of being curious, it's part of being, I guess, also smart. And, when you have something so amazing as a vineyard, as a family winery, you're like, okay, I can keep on following what has been done forever, or at least for the last 50 years in our family, or start to actually put question marks on everything. And we decided to do that. And we did it both on the whites and also on the reds.
I keep telling you, Alessio, think different.
I love to think different. And so definitely this crew focus has been part of Inama, but we decided to push it to the next level. And we are doing something even more precise now. And we are about to launch a new label very soon, probably into 2021, which will be what really is the maximum level that we can achieve, is a selection of the best grapes of the best vineyards, really
in the best vintage.
So it's something like the best possible Soave that Inama can make, really after all of this work on the last 10 years in viticulture and winemaking. But also the same process went through in the reds area, where we work in the Coliberici, where we work with Carmenère, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon, but mainly Carmenère. And that was different, that was a pioneering project in the last 20 years, that really took our dad in a very, with a lot of braveness and a lot of curiosity in discovering the potential of the Coliberici. 20 years of facing the difficulties of a varietal as Carmenère that is very tricky, is very complicated, but it has a lot of personality, it's very appealing, it's very unique.
It's very local. It acts really like indigenous grape. It's so adapted. My father straight went in love for that and believed in Carmenère project.
And after 20 years of work and hard work, we decided also to take it to the next level as well. And since 3 years, we decided for the first time ever to expand our knowledge and our expertise to another team, to open up our team to another team. And so we started a collaboration with one of the most important winemakers in France, in the Bordeaux scene. And the first results of this collaboration are exciting, because we really kind of started to join our expertise of Carmenère in the Coliberici with the expertise of the varietals in Bordeaux. And this collaboration, and the name, I'm going to tell it here for the first time on a official channel worldwide is Stéphane de Renancourt. Stéphane de Renancourt is a very well-known winemaker in Bordeaux. And you know, being humble as vigneron, we started to really join our curiosity, and this collaboration is taking our wines to definitely to a higher level, to a more intense, more complex, more vibrant level. And this is extremely exciting. That's what we are really focusing on for the next years.
Fantastic. I mean, tasting your wines in the last few years is you've had the collaboration with Stefan that's been going on has been dramatic. I mean, the wines and the way that they're showing is there's even in such a short time frame is extraordinary. And I would say that it's not so much his winemaking as it's the work, his work as a vigneron, and giving you some ideas from Bordeaux into how to work with your Carmenere vineyards, which is.
I would say that in winemaking, most of the time, 1 + 1 makes more than 2.
Bravo.
It's about fine tuning. We knew that we did our homeworks, but as Socrates says, which is a very important philosopher in the Greek times, you know that you don't know. So we knew there was something we didn't know, and when we tried the wines which of the chateau which are consulted from Stefan, we immediately understand that there was something magic in the wines. And when we met the team, they are so rock and roll, so great people, so much fun. And we said, these are the people for us. And in 1 year time, we made a revolution into Inama, which actually our staff went crazy. And I've been following personally all the process and the conversion. And in 1 year, the wines bloomed and went to the next level. So it's just about hard work and having fun.
Well, thanks for schooling us on Socrates. That's always great. And it's about being open-minded. It's about being able to make mistakes and try them again until you find the right solution. Working with great people, and you know, Italy. You guys said earlier that Italy used to be called Inotria, the land of wine. And in a land of wine, where wine is made in all 20 regions of Italy, where wine is a way of life, where wine is a way people define themselves along with various dishes, it's almost impossible. It's so rare to develop a new wine growing region, and yet you guys have. You've given birth to a region that fell by the wayside, Colli Berici, with Carmenere, that originally people thought was Cabernet Franc, but is really Carmenere. You're now the largest grower of Carmenere in Europe, and you know, hats off to creating something that's obviously extraordinary and that other people are now beginning to understand and follow, and being the leaders there, but also to creating, giving new life really to something. And that's really, really hard to do in an area that's as well defined and explored as Italy is. Well, I think we did a good job today of exploring a lot of different areas and looking at a lot of different themes. I want to thank you guys for bringing, as you said, your energy and your passion and your creativity, what you guys do every single day. We'll do the same out here in the US. Did you want to say a last few words before we wrap it up?
I would love to.
Okay. So and that cuts us off. I'm sorry, but we're out of time. No, okay.
Yeah, no. I just a few words. You know, sometimes it's very great. You know, the wine. What is different of the wine business compared to other businesses? It's the passion. It's the people that are every day talking about our wines. That are tasting. They are loving their job. So a big thanks to Dalla Terra, to the whole team, and to all the supporters that we have all across the US and the world. You know, sometimes the passion of wine is really taking us to taste different things, taste different wines. We don't have to stuck on the same things.
Taste different vintages.
And sometimes the consumers needs, you know, an example, somebody taking the lead. And it's great to have like so many, you know, passionate lovers that are really showing to their love to the normal consumers that maybe they would just drink a Chardonnay or a Pinot or a Cabernet Sauvignon. That are great wines, but you know, there's more to it. So it's fun, it's creative, and it's every day a new adventure. Thank you, everybody.
Bravo, bravo, bravo. Yeah, there's a lot more out there than meets the eye, and it's a treat to work with you guys. We've been working together for, well, I don't know, quanti anni, 14 years. I don't know, long time.
15, yeah,
15 years.
time.
It's been a real treat, and also to see the evolution. So I want to thank you guys for joining us today, and to Alessio, to Matteo, and to Luca. And I want to thank all you guys for joining us at our Terra Masterclass. Next week, on Tuesday, we'll be sitting down with Vietti, and on Thursday with Casanova Denaria next week. So don't miss those. Same bat time, same bat channel. And you guys can register on our Masterclass website on the Terra events portion of our website. And these all get saved to YouTube, so you can check them out later on. So be smart, be kind, focus locally, and drink globally. Grazie. Arrivederci.
Ciao, everybody.
Ciao.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao.